The Galactic Council chamber was the largest hall in the known galaxy, a shining structure of crystal and steel floating above a blue giant star. Its windows stretched so tall that the light of the star poured across the chamber like rivers of fire. Every species had its own seat, arranged in wide rings around the central podium where the High Speaker stood. The voices of hundreds of empires echoed in that place, deep roars, sharp screeches, metallic clicks, even whispers that slithered like snakes, and all blended into one storm of sound that filled the air whenever the council met. But no matter how loud the debates grew, there was always one thing that caught the attention of every visitor. One chair that stood out from the rest. A simple dark seat marked with the crest of Earth. It was empty, and it had been empty for decades. Generations had come and gone in the chamber, and still the humans never came. Their absence had become more famous than their presence, and the galaxy turned their silence into a joke. Aliens pointed at the seat and laughed, calling humanity weak, cowardly, or irrelevant. Some said humans were too primitive to belong. Others said they were afraid. Some even said they had destroyed themselves, and every cycle the mockery grew louder. On this day the chamber was alive with it. A reptilian delegate with golden eyes leaned forward and hissed loudly. Still no humans. Perhaps they are busy fighting each other on their savage world. The chamber filled with laughter, sharp clicking from insectoid mouths, booming roars from the Molcar giants, screeches from the feathered aviators. They all joined in, mocking Earth as if the empty seat was a toy for their amusement. One alien slammed his claw on the table and said, "Perhaps their ships all broke down. The poor creatures cannot even fly straight." Another laughed. Or perhaps they realized they are nothing and so they hide in shame. The laughter echoed across the crystal walls like thunder. The High Speaker, a tall figure with a translucent skull and glowing blue veins, raised his long arms for silence. His voice rolled across the chamber like a wave. For another cycle the humans have not come. For another cycle their seat remains empty. This is proof they are unworthy of their place in this council. They were invited, yet they offer nothing. They are silent while we shape the galaxy. His words were met with cheers, claws clapping, wings beating, metallic fists slamming tables. Their mockery grew louder, drowning the chamber in pride. But not everyone laughed. In one shadowed corner an old ambassador from a water world leaned forward, his gills opening and closing slowly, his voice rough but steady. "Do not laugh too loudly. You forget what humans are. They are children of a death world. They survived storms, quakes, fire and beasts, even their own kind. Silence from such a species is not weakness, it is preparation." His words fell heavy, but the chamber only paused for a moment before bursting into louder laughter, mocking. The old one, as if he had spoken nonsense. "You sound afraid of ghosts," sneered a scaled delegate. "Humans are gone. They hide in their fragile world and hope we forget them." Another jeered. "If they were strong they would be here. Their silence proves they are nothing." The old ambassador sank back in his chair, ignored, his warning swallowed by arrogance. The empty seat remained, quiet and still, yet somehow heavy, as if it carried a shadow of meaning no one wanted to admit. A few young ambassadors whispered nervously. "Why do they never answer? Why do they ignore us?" Another said quietly, "What if they are building something?" But their elders silenced them quickly. "Do not waste words on ghosts, Earth is nothing." Still the doubt clung to the air, unspoken but present. Because in the galaxy silence was rare. Silence meant planning. Silence meant danger. An insectoid delegate clicked his mandibles loudly. "Let us vote to strip them of their seat. Give it to a species that deserves it. We waste space on their memory." The chamber cheered in agreement. The High Speaker raised his glowing hands and declared, "Yes, perhaps it is time. The humans refuse to appear. Then let us erase them from our circle. For what use is a member who does not speak, who does not attend, who does not exist?" The cheers shook the chamber, but in the corners of the hall. Older eyes watched the empty seat carefully, remembering old reports, remembering how quickly humanity had once risen. How their colonies spread faster than expected. How their wars were brutal but their victories shocking. And how then, without warning, they had vanished from galactic politics altogether. The laughter continued, the vote prepared, the chamber celebrated its arrogance. Yet in the silence beneath the noise the seat remained, untouched, unbroken, waiting. And though they called it a symbol of weakness, though they laughed and mocked and jeered, none of them could stop their eyes from flicking back to it again and again. For somewhere deep inside even the most arrogant of them felt it. A shadow of unease, the thought that Earth's silence might not be cowardice, but something far more dangerous, and that one day the empty seat would no longer be empty. And when that day came, the galaxy would tremble. The chamber roared with arrogance as the vote for stripping Earth's seat was prepared. The High Speaker's glowing arms raised the crystal gavel, his voice booming across the chamber. Let the galaxy no longer waste breath on a world too weak to stand among us. But before the vote was cast, the delegates began their mocking speeches, one after another rising to pour their scorn into the air. A feathered ambassador with bright red wings stood and flapped dramatically. His voice sharp as he screeched, "Humans are nothing but myths. We should erase them before children believe old stories of their savagery. They crawl on their world like insects. They cannot even rise above their oceans without tripping over their own feet." The crowd howled in laughter. Another ambassador, a massive reptilian with scales shining under the chamber lights, slammed his heavy claws against the table and hissed. "They are cowards, too afraid to face us. They fear true diplomacy. They fear truth. They fear everything. Let us banish their name from this hall. It will be a gift to the galaxy." Others shouted their agreement, their voices rising in waves, each word sharp like knives thrown at the empty seat. The mockery thickened like smoke, choking the chamber, and the laughter grew louder and harsher as if they needed the noise to silence the faint unease that had settled in the corners of their minds. A long-limbed insectoid delegate rose, its mandibles clicking, its thin arms gesturing toward the empty chair. "For too long we have tolerated this insult. An empty seat at the circle of the stars, a ghost at our table. We should melt that chair into scrap and give it to a species that has earned it." Cheers erupted, claws and fists and wings pounding. The chamber echoing with arrogance, a tall crystalline being shimmered with cruel light as it spoke. "The humans are irrelevant. Their silence is cowardice. Their weakness is legend. They add nothing. They give nothing. They are parasites on our memory." The words rang across the chamber, each one met with more cheers, more laughter, the sound of pride blinding them. Still, a few uneasy voices tried to break through. A small amphibian delegate croaked softly. "What if their silence is not weakness but planning? What if they wait?" But before he could finish he was drowned by laughter. A giant Mulcar slammed his fist on the table so hard the floor shook, roaring. "If they were planning anything we would have seen it. Their ships are old, their colonies scattered, their silence is their end. They are too small to threaten us." The crowd roared its agreement, their laughter shaking the crystal walls. The High Speaker leaned forward, his glowing skull flashing as he declared, "The galaxy must move forward without them. Earth has abandoned us. Let them rot on their fragile blue world. We will not wait for cowards." His words were met with a storm of approval, every species trying to outdo the others in mockery, every voice raised to bury the shadow of doubt that whispered in the silence. But even as they mocked, their eyes kept sliding back to the empty seat, as if it watched them, as if it waited for them to laugh louder, as if it dared them to forget. The mockery grew until the chamber became a circus of insults, each ambassador rising to throw crueler words than the last, and the empty seat stood still in the center of it all, quiet, patient, untouched, and though they called humanity weak, though they spat their laughter into the air, though they drowned the chamber in pride, none could escape the truth buried in their own minds. That silence was not always weakness, sometimes silence was the storm before the strike. And if humanity ever returned, the galaxy would pay dearly for every laugh. The laughter still shook the chamber, but deep in the noise a single voice cut through, old and cracked like stone under pressure. An elder ambassador from the Kalari stood slowly, his body bent with age, his skin pale from centuries of service, his voice quiet yet carrying a weight the chamber could not ignore. "You mock the humans, you call them weak, you call them gone. But I have lived long enough to remember when their ships first rose into the stars. I have seen the fire of their wars. And I tell you this, their silence is not cowardice. Their absence is not surrender. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. They wait." The chamber went still for a moment, unease crawling across the delegates as the old words sank into their minds. Flashes of memory stirred in the elders present. Memories of reports long buried, reports of human fleets in their early days moving faster than expected, building colonies with a speed that frightened border systems, fighting wars against both themselves and others with a ferocity that stunned their enemies. Some remembered whispers of entire armies that rose and vanished in the span of decades, like storms that appeared without warning and left nothing but ash. The silence in the chamber deepened, yet it lasted only a moment before a younger delegate broke it with sharp laughter. "The old one fears shadows," he jeered, his voice high and mocking. Humans are nothing but relics of a violent past. They burned themselves out. Their empty chair is all that remains. Others joined in, drowning the unease with cruel jokes. Yes, let the ghost keep its seat. It will never rise. Their silence is the silence of extinction. The laughter rolled again, heavier this time as if they wanted to bury their own doubts under noise. But the elder did not sit, his voice rising, stronger now. You think silence is weakness because you have never lived with humans. You do not understand their kind. They were born on a death world. Every day of their history was a battle. They built weapons not for glory but for survival. And when they go silent it is because they prepare, they watch, they sharpen their blades in the dark. When they speak it is only after they are ready to strike. Mark my words. If they return to this chamber, it will not be with words but with fire. His warning sent another shiver through the chamber. Some younger delegates shifted uneasily, their laughter faltering, but the majority shouted over him, lies, fear, paranoia. One insectoid clicked loudly. If humans had such power we would see it. We monitor the stars, we track every fleet, we would know if they were building. Yet even as he spoke, doubt crept into a few minds, because they knew not every corner of the galaxy could be monitored. Not every shadow tracked, and humans had always been unpredictable. The high speaker slammed his staff against the floor, his glowing veins pulsing with irritation. Enough of these ghost stories. The humans have abandoned us. Their silence proves their irrelevance. We will strip their name and their seat from this chamber. Let the galaxy be rid of their shadow. Cheers followed, loud and proud, but quieter voices whispered at the edges, nervous and doubtful, ambassadors leaning close to one another. What if the elder is right? What if they return? What if? Their silence hides a fleet, but none dared say it too loud. None dared face the mockery of the crowd. So they stayed quiet, their fear buried beneath the storm of pride. The empty seat remained in the center, silent and heavy, as if it listened to every word, as if it waited for the moment the laughter would end. The elder sank back into his chair, his eyes shadowed, his voice a whisper only he could hear. You will regret your laughter, for when they come, it will already be too late. The chamber did not quiet after the elder's warning, it only grew louder, the voices of the arrogant drowning out the few who felt uneasy. The high speaker raised his glowing arms and called for order, his voice booming through the hall. This council will not be mocked by an absent species any longer. We are the rulers of the stars, and if Earth refuses to appear, then we will force them. The words struck like a hammer, silencing the chamber for only a heartbeat before applause and cheers. Exploded, claws slammed against tables, wings flapped, metallic fists banged the air. The council loved nothing more than a display of power, and stripping Earth of its seat would be a spectacle. The high speaker turned to the scribes at the edge of the hall, his translucent head glowing brighter. Prepare the summons. Earth will be given one final chance to attend the next summit. If they do not come, their membership will be revoked, their trade rights cut, their protections removed, and their name erased from these halls forever. The scribes bowed and began writing the words into official form, their pens scratching against glowing crystal tablets. The decree was passed to the ambassadors one by one for signatures, each delegate pressing their seal with pride, stamping humanity's absence like a mark of shame. One feathered delegate cackled, his wings flaring. They will not come, they are too afraid, and when they fail to answer, we will laugh as we erase them. Another sneered, his scaled lips curling. Yes, let them face extinction in silence. No council fleets will protect their worlds when pirates and raiders tear them apart. The crowd laughed, the sound cruel and sharp, mocking Earth even as the decree moved closer to completion. Only a handful of voices whispered in the corners. What if they do come? What if their silence is not fear but strength? But those whispers were quickly swallowed by the pride of the chamber, for arrogance had become their shield, and they believed themselves untouchable. The decree was finalized by the end of the day. The high speaker stood tall, his staff glowing as he declared, "Let the final summons be sent to Earth. Let them hear our command, and if they refuse, then their empty seat will be melted down and forgotten." The chamber erupted with cheers again, the sound shaking the crystal walls. The empty seat seemed smaller than ever, yet heavier in its silence, as if it carried its own weight of defiance against their arrogance. The summons was placed into the hands of a courier fleet, sleek ships painted with the council's crest, their engines burning as they leapt into the dark. carrying the final warning across the stars toward a small blue world that had not spoken in decades. On Earth, deep beneath clouds and oceans, the message arrived, the signal flashing across hidden satellites, intercepted by watchful eyes. Humans gathered in silent chambers as the Council's words were read aloud. Attend the next summit or be erased from the galaxy's memory. The Hall of Humans did not erupt in panic, it did not break into chaos, instead silence fell, heavy and sharp, the silence of people who had been waiting. The silence of people who had not forgotten. One human leader leaned forward, his voice calm but cold. So, they believe we are afraid, another answered. They think silence is surrender, a third spoke. Then let us show them what we built in silence. Their eyes glowed with quiet fire. The message was folded, placed aside like something trivial. For humanity had already chosen their answer long ago, and while the Council mocked and cheered, the humans prepared. Back in the Galactic Chamber, the summons was celebrated as if victory was already achieved. Banners were raised, speeches prepared. News feeds blasted across the galaxy with headlines mocking Earth again. The silent planet given last chance. Council to erase humans from history. Children laughed at plays where actors pretended to be clumsy humans crawling across floors. Merchants sold trinkets of broken chairs labeled as Earth's throne. The galaxy moved with arrogance, blind to the storm that had already begun to gather behind Earth's silence. The empty seat remained still in the Council chamber, but if one looked closely, it seemed less like a forgotten relic and more like a shadow waiting to be filled, and though the Council could not hear it, the stars themselves seemed to whisper of a reckoning that was coming. The day of the summit arrived and the chamber of the Galactic Council shone brighter than ever. The crystal walls glimmered. The banners of 100 species hung. Tall, the seats filled with ambassadors and rulers dressed in their richest robes, wings decorated with gemstones, armor polished until it shone, scaled creatures with gold rings along their tails, insectoids with jeweled carapaces that caught the light like rainbows, every species eager to witness history. For today they would strip Earth of its seat and erase the name of humanity from the records. The air buzzed with excitement and arrogance. The galleries were filled with journalists and citizens who had come just to laugh when the decree was spoken. The cameras blinked across the chamber ready to broadcast the moment to every corner of the galaxy. Earth mocked one last time for their silence. The High Speaker stood tall in the center, his glowing veins pulsing brighter as he raised the ancient staff, his voice echoing across the chamber. The time has come. The humans have ignored our summons. They insult this chamber with their silence. And so we gather to erase them forever. Let history remember them as cowards who could not rise to the stars. The crowd erupted in cheers, the sound rolling across the hall like thunder. Some slammed their claws on tables, some screeched, others pounded their fists, the laughter filling the chamber again. Karen-like figures among the Council's inner circle smirked at one another, their arrogance shining through. One feathered delegate leaned toward another and whispered loudly. Perhaps they forgot how to leave their world. And the chamber chuckled, another sneered. Perhaps they drowned in their own oceans, yet another laughed. Perhaps their empty seat should be given to a species of worms, at least worms would show up. The jokes spread like fire and the whole chamber joined in, mocking the one species that was not there, forgetting the unease that had flickered in some of their hearts when the elder had spoken warnings, forgetting the rumors that whispered at the edges of space about fleets built in silence. The High Speaker raised his hand again and the laughter slowly died down, the gavel lifted high. By the will of the Council, Earth is hereby, he began, but his words were cut off by a low tremor that rippled through the crystal floor, the sound faint at first like a distant thunderstorm. The delegates glanced around nervously, some brushed it off as station vibrations, but the tremor grew louder, deeper, as if the very stars outside were growling. A messenger burst through the great chamber doors, his robes disheveled, his breathing heavy, his voice sharp with panic as it echoed through the chamber. High Speaker, unidentified fleets have entered the system, hundreds of them. No, thousands. Their signals are human, they are human warships. The chamber fell into a silence so sharp that even the hum of the crystal walls could be heard. The laughter died instantly. The delegates froze in their seats. The High Speaker lowered his gavel, his glowing veins dimming as he hissed, "Impossible. Humans cannot field such fleets. They have been silent for decades." But the messenger raised a trembling hand and activated the holoscreens that lined the chamber walls. In an instant the room was filled with the sight of stars outside. And in those stars shadows appeared, massive human warships dropping from hyperspace one after another. their hulls black and gleaming, bristling with weapons, engines burning with blue fire. The formation so precise and overwhelming that the sky itself seemed to be covered by them. The number climbing until it reached 1,000 ships, more than most empires could ever dream of. Gasps erupted across the chamber. The same delegates who had mocked now sat with wide eyes, wings trembling, claws frozen above their tables, insectoids clicking nervously, reptilians hissing in disbelief. This cannot be, one whispered. It is a trick, it must be a trick. But the images showed the truth. 1,000 warships standing silent, waiting, their guns shining like predators in the dark. The empty seat in the chamber no longer looked weak. It looked like a threat, a symbol that had waited decades for this exact moment. The high speaker's voice faltered, for the first time in his long reign. They have come. And the entire chamber held its breath, because Earth had finally answered, not with words, not with excuses, but with a fleet that could shatter the galaxy's pride in a single strike. The silence in the council chamber was heavy, thicker than stone. Every ambassador sat frozen in their seat as the giant screens above showed the stars outside drowning in the shadows of human warships, one after another they appeared, massive carriers, destroyers, cruisers, their hulls dark like midnight and glowing faintly with blue lines of power. 1,000 ships locked in formation, their engines burning like suns, their guns lined like teeth of predators. The council had mocked Earth for decades, laughed at their silence, but now silence had become a weapon, and the galaxy trembled under it. For the human fleet did not fire, did not move, they only waited, surrounding the system like an iron cage. Delegates muttered in panic, insectoids clicked in fear, reptilians hissed and pulled back their claws, feathered species flapped their wings nervously, even the giants of Mulcair shifted uneasily in their seats. The air was thick with disbelief. Some whispered, "It is a bluff," others said, "It cannot be real." But their eyes told them the truth. Their senses confirmed it. Every warship was human, every signal came from Earth, and every one of those ships was armed to the teeth. Then the chamber doors began to open, slow, heavy, the sound echoing through the hall like thunder rolling over mountains. Every head turned, every mouth fell silent. The laughter that once filled the chamber was dead now, replaced by a fear so sharp it cut through the air. The doors parted and from the blinding white light of the corridor, figures appeared. A line of armored soldiers marching in perfect formation. Their boots striking the crystal floor in unison, the sound sharp, steady, unstoppable, their armor black and silver, visors glowing faintly blue, rifles strapped across their chests. They looked like shadows given life, soldiers bred from silence, the kind of warriors the galaxy had told itself were myths. Yet here they were walking into the chamber without hesitation. Behind them came the human leader, tall, calm, his step steady, his cloak dark and lined with the emblem of Earth, his eyes sharp like fire hidden behind ice. He carried no weapon, but his presence was heavier than the guns of the soldiers who flanked him. He walked down the central aisle slowly, every step echoing through the chamber, his boots striking the floor like the beat of a war drum. The ambassadors shrank back as he passed, their earlier arrogance vanishing like dust in a storm. Wings folded, claws lowered, voices silenced. No one dared speak. No one dared move, for the silence of the humans was no longer absence, it was domination. He reached the once empty seat, the chair that had been mocked, laughed at, and ignored for decades, and without a word he sat, his soldiers standing tall behind him, their faces unreadable behind glowing visors. The human leader leaned forward, placing his hands on the table, his voice finally breaking the silence of decades, calm, deep, steady, each word cutting through the chamber like steel. You laughed because we were silent. You mocked because we did not come. You thought our absence meant weakness. You thought silence meant fear. But while you wasted your breath, we built. While you laughed, we prepared. While you mocked, we forged a fleet in the dark. And now we are here, and we do not ask, we do not beg, we take our seat. The chamber shook with the weight of his words, the empty chair no longer a symbol of weakness but now a throne reclaimed. And every ambassador felt the same truth settle into their bones. Humanity's silence had ended, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The chamber was so silent that even the hum of the crystal lights above seemed deafening. Every ambassador who once laughed, mocked, and jeered now sat frozen in their seats, their eyes wide, their throats dry. The image of the 1,000 warships outside still flickering across the walls, the black steel hulls bristling with weapons, engines glowing like suns. The The sky of the Council's world filled with Earth's silence. The silence that had once been a joke, now transformed into terror. The human leader leaned forward in his seat. The once empty chair no longer empty but claimed with a presence so heavy that even the strongest of alien rulers dared not meet his gaze. His soldiers stood tall behind him, their armor gleaming, their visors glowing blue, unmoving, unblinking, as if they were statues of war carved out of shadow. The Council, a place that had mocked humanity for decades, now looked like a classroom of children waiting for punishment. The human leader spoke at last, his voice low, calm, but carrying across the hall as if the chamber itself amplified it. Every word sharp, deliberate, heavy with authority. For decades you laughed at our absence, you mocked our silence, you called us cowards, irrelevant, forgotten. But you were wrong. Our silence was not weakness, it was patience. While you wasted years in endless debates and empty speeches, we built in the dark. We forged a fleet that could crush empires. We prepared for the day when the galaxy would test us. And now here we are. A ripple went through the chamber. Some tried to shift in their seats but froze when the soldiers behind the leader turned their heads slightly. As if even the smallest movement might bring their wrath, the human leader continued, his tone steady. You believe this council is the heart of the galaxy. You believe this chamber holds power. But today you learn the truth. Power is not words shouted in halls of crystal. Power is the fleet that shadows your worlds. Power is the silence that waits until the blade is sharp, and now the blade has been unsheathed. The reptilian delegate who once jeered about humans being savages tried to rise, his claws shaking, his voice thin. This is intimidation. This is against the laws of the council. But the human leader's eyes cut to him like ice, and his voice fell silent before the next word could leave his mouth. The leader leaned back slightly, his expression unreadable. Laws? You speak of laws when you mocked us, when you tried to erase us, when you voted to take our seat while we were absent. You called us cowards while we sharpened our steel, and now you speak of laws? No. Today humanity speaks, and the galaxy will listen. The feathered ambassador who once laughed the loudest folded his wings tight against his body, trembling, his beak clicking nervously, his arrogance broken. The insectoid delegates who clicked with scorn now clicked with fear, their mandibles clattering softly like teeth chattering in cold. The human leader's voice deepened, his words slow and deliberate. From this moment forward, Earth will not ask for respect. Earth will not beg for recognition. Earth will not tolerate mockery. We are here. Our fleets stand above your worlds. Our soldiers stand in your chamber. And you will deal with us as equals or you will not deal with us at all. Trade will be fair, colonies will be recognized, and corruption within this council will end. Or humanity will end it for you. Gasps filled the room. Some tried to protest but no sound came. Fear pinned them to their seats. The weight of 1,000 warships silencing every voice. The human leader rose from the chair, his shadow stretching long across the chamber, his soldiers tightening formation behind him. He raised his hand slowly, his eyes locked on the high speaker. You called us absent, you called us weak, but now you see us, now you hear us, now you understand the price of your laughter. Humanity has arrived. And we will not leave. The chamber shook with the silence that followed, heavier than the noise of 1,000 debates, heavier than the roars of 1,000 species. The empty seat of Earth was no longer empty. It was now a throne claimed with fire and steel, and every ambassador in the chamber knew in their bones that the galaxy had changed forever. The chamber felt like it was frozen in ice. No one moved, no one spoke. All eyes locked on the human leader who had turned the council's greatest hall of mockery into a graveyard of silence. The warfleet outside filled every alien mind with terror. The 1,000 warships glinting like blades ready to strike, and the soldiers inside stood like statues of iron, their visors glowing, their rifles heavy but still, their presence alone louder than any weapon. The human leader remained standing, his gaze sweeping across the hundreds of ambassadors who only cycles ago had mocked his world. His voice came again, calm but heavy, a voice that seemed to press down on their chests like gravity itself. For years you laughed, for years you spoke of laws while you broke them. You fattened yourselves with corruption. You stripped colonies of resources. You silenced smaller worlds with fear. You thought power belonged to your voices and your votes. But power belongs to those who can defend it, and humanity has come to claim what is ours. His words echoed through the chamber, and though no one dared to interrupt, their faces twisted, some in fear, some in shame, and a few in stubborn arrogance that was already cracking. The human leader raised his hand and a soldier stepped forward, placing a dark device on the center table. It flickered to life, showing maps of star systems, trade routes, colonies. His voice sharpened. Here are our demands. They are not requests. They are the new terms of balance in this galaxy. First, all human colonies will be recognized officially and granted independence from Council interference. Second, trade routes through human space will be equal. No tariffs, no sanctions, no manipulations by corrupt Council members. Third, the Council will end its practice of stripping resources from smaller worlds under false rules, because humanity will no longer allow predators to hide behind laws. A murmur rippled through the chamber, but fear kept their voices low. The reptilian delegate twitched his claws as if to rise, but the sight of human soldiers' hands near their rifles froze him in place. The feathered ambassador tucked his wings tighter, eyes darting nervously, and even the insectoids whose mandibles once clicked mockery now clicked in fear like chattering teeth. The human leader's voice grew colder, and finally, corruption will end, the hidden payments, the stolen wealth, the threats against weaker systems. You will open your records, you will face judgment, and if you refuse, humanity's fleets will make their own judgments. The holomap shifted, glowing with images of human warships surrounding not just the Council station but other star systems. Their patrol routes revealed in chilling detail. The ambassadors gasped, some shouted in disbelief, impossible, how did they reach so far? But the images were real, the proof undeniable. Earth's silence had hidden not weakness but expansion. Their fleets already stretched like a net across the stars. Their presence not just here but everywhere. The galaxy's greatest secret laid bare in an instant. The High Speaker trembled, his glowing veins dimming as he tried to raise his staff, his voice faltering. This is intimidation. This is not diplomacy. You cannot. But the human leader cut across him with steel in his voice. We can, and we already have. You called us cowards for staying silent. But silence is only the mask of preparation. And now we speak, and you will listen, or your worlds will feel the silence of our guns. The words rolled through the chamber like thunder, heavy and final. And in that moment every species realized the balance of the galaxy had shifted, no longer in the hands of those who laughed the loudest, but in the hands of those who built in silence. The ambassadors looked at one another, some pale with fear, some trembling with anger but too afraid to speak. The reptilian who once jeered lowered his head. The feathered who once laughed pressed his claws together. The insectoids curled their antennae close. And the giants who once roared sat still as stone, all broken by the weight of Earth's demands. The human leader leaned forward, his final words calm yet sharp. You have a choice, obey these terms and survive, or defy them and vanish. Humanity does not bluff. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And our silence will never be mocked again. The chamber erupted, not in laughter but in chaos. Whispers turned to gasps. Gasps turned to shouts. Fear spilling from every corner. But above it all the warships remained, silent, endless. Their shadows falling over alien homeworlds across the galaxy. And every ambassador knew that for the first time in history the Council was no longer the master of the galaxy. Humanity was. The chamber was chaos, voices rising. Claws scraping against crystal tables. Wings flapping wildly. Insectoid mandibles. Clattering in panic, the ambassadors who once sat with pride now fought to find words, their arrogance shattering under the weight of the human fleet above their skies. One reptilian delegate slammed his claw against the table and roared, "We are the Council, we will not kneel to humans." But his voice trembled even as he spoke, his scales shivering with fear. Another feathered ambassador tried to rise and flap his wings in defiance, screeching, "This chamber belongs to the galaxy, not Earth." But the sound cracked halfway through, his words drowned by the silence of human soldiers who turned their glowing visors toward him in perfect unison. The sight enough to silence his rebellion before it could grow, their movements small, but their meaning heavy, a silent reminder of the 1,000 warships waiting outside, their guns locked on alien worlds. The High Speaker attempted to stand tall, his glowing veins flickering, his voice desperate. "If we give in today, the Council will never recover its pride. We will be slaves to Earth. This cannot be allowed." His words echoed through the chamber but fell flat, for no one moved, no one cheered. The pride that had once fueled their laughter now lay broken, scattered like glass under iron boots, and in its place was fear, cold and sharp, the fear of a species they had mocked for decades but now, faced with eyes wide and hearts trembling. The human leader did not raise his voice, He did not shout. He only leaned back in the chair, his presence heavy enough to crush their words without lifting a hand. His soldiers did not move. Their stillness was louder than any roar. Their silence the blade that cut deeper than any speech. The human leader's gaze swept across the chamber, calm but merciless, his voice deep and final. Your pride was built on lies, on arrogance, on the belief that no one could challenge you, but your pride is dust now, because pride cannot stop fleets, pride cannot silence guns, and pride cannot shield your worlds from fire. You mocked us for being silent, but today you see why we waited. Gasps filled the room. The delegates looked to one another, hoping someone would rise, hoping someone would resist, but no one did, their courage broken, their arrogance turned to dust. One insectoid delegate whispered softly. If they can field 1,000 warships, what else have they hidden? Another croaked. If they built this in silence, then perhaps they have more we cannot even imagine. Fear spread like poison, infecting even the strongest of voices, and the chamber began to collapse. Into despair, some shouting for compromise, others begging for mercy. Their unity shattered by the presence of a single human sitting in the chair they once laughed at. The High Speaker raised his staff again, desperate to salvage his authority, his voice shaking. We cannot give in, we must fight, But his words died as the screens above flickered once more, showing the human fleet moving, not firing, not attacking, but shifting into new formations, their precision terrifying, their silence deafening, entire squadrons of ships aligning as one, creating patterns across the stars like blades drawn from scabbards. The chamber fell silent again. Every delegate's eyes locked on the display, the High Speaker's glowing veins dimmed, his staff lowering slowly as the truth settled on him heavier than the walls of the chamber. Resistance meant annihilation. The human leader finally stood, his shadow long under the chamber's light, his soldiers stepping forward in perfect rhythm, their boots striking like thunder, his voice final and cold. Your pride is shattered, your laughter ended, your choice is survival or extinction. Humanity will not ask again. The words rang like a verdict, and no one in the chamber could deny them, their pride crushed under the silence of Earth's fleet, their power broken by the one species they had mocked the most. And, in that moment, every ambassador knew the Council was no longer master of the galaxy, humanity was. The chamber no longer sounded like the proud hall of the Galactic Council. It sounded like a tomb, silence pressing down on every ambassador, their heads lowered, their pride broken, their arrogance turned into dust. Outside the windows the sky was still filled with human warships, 1,000 blades of steel casting shadows across the stars, their engines glowing like fire, their silence heavier than thunder. The galaxy had mocked Earth for decades, but now no one dared to laugh. No one dared to speak without trembling, because every word could bring down fire. The human leader stood tall in the center, the once empty seat now his throne, his soldiers at his back unmoving, their visors glowing like cold fire, their rifles heavy in their hands, the weight of their presence enough to silence worlds. His voice came again, calm but final, a voice that was no longer just for the chamber but for the galaxy, carried across the holoscreens into every system. This council has ruled through arrogance, corruption, and fear. You mocked us, tried to erase us. But now you see what silence was hiding. You see the truth of humanity. And from this day forward things will change. From this day forward there will be a new order. His words struck like hammer blows. The ambassadors shifted, wings trembling, claws tapping nervously, mandibles clicking in fear. But no one dared interrupt. The leader continued. The council will remain, but no longer as a throne of corruption, no longer as a stage for your mockery. You will serve the galaxy or you will vanish. Smaller worlds will no longer be stripped of their resources. Colonies will no longer be enslaved by your lies. Trade will be fair, voices will be heard, and those who resist will face humanity's judgment. Gasps rippled across the chamber. Some looked at each other with disbelief, others with relief, because for centuries the council had bled them dry, and now at last a power stood that even the strongest could not ignore. The human leader's eyes burned as he spoke his final words. We are not your slaves, we are not your toys, we are not your ghosts, we are humanity, and we will not be erased. We will lead in silence when we must, we will strike when we choose, and we will never be mocked again. His voice echoed, the chamber vibrating with the weight of his declaration, and in that moment the galaxy felt the chains around its neck loosen, yet new ones tighten, Not of weakness but of discipline, not of corruption but of iron. The high speaker trembled, his glowing veins dimmed, his staff lowered as he bowed his head. The first surrender of the council in centuries. One by one the ambassadors followed, reptilians lowering their claws, feathered folding their wings, insectoids bowing their antennae, even the giants bending their heads. One after another they bent to the silence of Earth, to the will of humanity, their pride shattered, their submission undeniable. And so the chamber that once mocked Earth now knelt before it. Outside, the human fleet shifted again, their engines burning brighter, their formation moving like a living wall. They did not fire a single shot, yet their silence spoke louder than war. The galaxy had been conquered not by words but by waiting, not by force of law but by force of preparation. Humanity had played the longest game, and now they had won. The human leader turned and began to walk away, his soldiers marching behind him in perfect rhythm. The sound of their boots echoing like thunder through the chamber. He did not look back, he did not need to, because he knew the council was his, he knew the galaxy was listening, he knew the future belonged to humanity. And the once empty chair behind him now stood as the symbol of an empire that had risen from silence, an empire born from mockery, forged in patience, and revealed in overwhelming fire. As the chamber doors closed behind them, the galaxy took a breath, but it was not relief, it was the breath of those who realized they were no longer rulers, but subjects of a new order, the human order, and though no one dared speak it aloud, every ambassador knew the truth that burned in their bones. Humanity had come not just to reclaim their seat, but to reshape the galaxy forever.